Hello and welcome to Scarves Around the Funnel, the podcast dedicated to Heart of Midlothian Football Club. Quite the week, and quite the week still to come. Hearts with that late victory over Hibernian to set them up perfectly for the trip to Ibrox. But what a difference a few minutes can make. On Wednesday night, it was looking like Ryan McGowan's Livy were going to hold Celtic to a 1-all draw, and Celtic would drop 2 points. And Rangers, despite being outplayed for most of the game against Motherwell, looked like they were going to pick up all 3 points at Fir Park until Celtic scored late through Oxlade-Chamberlain, and then Motherwell scored late. So as a result of Rangers dropping those 2 points at Fir Park, Hearts have a 5 point lead over Rangers and even more over Celtic, who've got a game in hand going into this weekend's action. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Donaldson. Alongside me, as always, my trusty lieutenant, looking ahead to 12 more cup finals to play. Hello, Scott McIntosh.
Look, could you just right, stop shouting at me, okay? Look, Charlie Mulgrew said it would be fine. Hello? Hello? Sorry, that was the missus. She was just on the phone wondering why I'd left my son in the car while I went out shopping. So I was trying to explain to her that
Wow.
somebody told me it'd be okay. How are we doing?
So
All good,
we're,
all good.
yeah, you've just used hello, hello as part of your intro ahead of a Rangers game, McIntosh.
Yeah, sorry.
Uh-huh.
Didn't quite realise that. It's a
Okay.
bit like that Chick Young skit, for only excuse all those years ago where he's
Exactly. And
interviewing Dick Advocate. Hello? Hello? Hello?
all those people listening to this and not seeing the YouTube version or wondering what's going on. So if we need a kind of audio description that you were picking up a mobile phone and making the call. I noticed this week you've been a voracious user of social media. You've had your trawler out this week and your rod, and your boat is rather full. You're loving life right now, aren't you?
It's fair to say that the bookmarking system on Twitter has been working well, not just for me, but I think plenty of Hearts fans over the last few months. And I think the best is yet to come. There's an interview that Tony Bloom done back at the beginning of August that's got loads of comments and replies to it that I think will be very good for bringing up come May if we go on and win this title.
It's like preparing for your tax return. We're keeping receipts right now, and we've
Yes.
got, we've got plenty to look back on if we do end up winning the Scottish title. Whether it's Anthony Brown going through the possibilities, like a lot of us have done, about how many points we might need to win the league. The bottom line is, and I was trying to work this out this morning. If we win the games that we're favourites for between now and the end of the season, we will win the league. It's as simple as that. And even if that means defeat at Ibrox or defeat at Celtic Park and winning the rest, we'll still win the league. But defeat at Ibrox doesn't even come into our thinking today. We will preview Sunday's trip to Castle Grayskull. We will look back at Tuesday night's late dramatic victory over Hibernian. I think one thing is clear though. If Hearts play the way they played against St Mirren and Hibs between now and the rest of the season, we're not winning the league. But things are going to be different starting on Sunday, and we'll preview the trip to Ibrox on Scarves Around the Funnel, episode 389. Before we look ahead to what's happening in Govan on Sunday, we're going to look back at a crazy evening. Football still hasn't broken out in that game. The weather was dreadful. The atmosphere was phenomenal. The tifo before the game, thanks to the Gorgie Ultras and Corbett, and this is my story, and all the boys and girls there, looked absolutely phenomenal. The drone shots on Premier Sports were just magnificent. That's all the positives out the way, because up until Thomas Magnuson scored the winning goal towards the end, it was a game that didn't really deserve a winning goal. But, as Rory Hamilton said in commentary, that's what champions do. Whether or not Hearts are champions, don't know. But they play to the whistle. And someone described it, I think it might even have been Tom English, as very Celtic-y, inferring that that's what Celtic have done so often in the past. Never mind in the past, against Dundee in the Scottish Cup. last weekend against Livingston in midweek. You don't just give up. You play until the whistle goes and you keep going. You never know what can happen. So, how are you feeling? We're recording this on Friday, a bit later than normal. Apologies for that. How are you feeling now, a few days after that, ahead of a Rangers game, compared to how you were feeling straight after the game at Tynecastle on Tuesday night, Scott?
Not that much different, to be honest. I suppose you could say that watching Rangers on Wednesday it sort of strengthened or validated how confident I was feeling about this weekend anyway. But I think even if you were to take that recent performance and result out of the equation, I think these games have kind of taken care of themselves for Hearts this season. I think this is where Hearts are at their best. I think we've talked about this a few times this year where I think Hearts are still set up to be better on the counter attack and are better without the ball, trying to win the ball as high up the pitch as they can through sort of maintaining quite a high and intense press. So I think when you play against a team like Rangers, who I don't think Rangers particularly want the ball much either, but I think the fans will demand that they do have control of the game. And I think because of that, we can take advantage of these fixtures and actually do to Rangers what St Mirren have done to us recently and sort of try and rattle them in those opening exchanges. So I don't think my sort of confidence has changed that much since Tuesday night. Apart from the fact that watching them against Motherwell, you can see that there's still chinks in the armour there at Rangers in terms of they're still trying to slowly introduce the January signings, but like us, because of either poor form at their end or the injury we've got to Shankland, we're having to rely on getting guys in maybe a little bit quicker than we maybe would have liked. So yeah, I think there's still issues there that we can definitely exploit.
That game on Tuesday night at Tynecastle took me back to the days of Alex Miller and the opposition dugout, games that were rarely any good. But the most important thing about an Edinburgh derby is not how you dress to go out to impress. It's did you get the job done? Did you end up doing what you hoped to do? As Derek McInnes said pre-game about the performance, yeah, we'd love a performance, but the most important thing is getting all 3 points. This was very much about points over performance. Did it tell you anything about Hearts we didn't already know?
No, probably not. Again, it probably just strengthens the confidence that I think the fans have that the team will fight on to the last minute, especially in games where we're probably not overly productive in possession. And I think Tuesday was another example of that. I think especially if you highlight some of our more creative outlets, I think we were very poor on the ball. Decision making again, which has been an issue now for maybe a month or two. I think that kind of shone through. But you can't question the fact that everyone's playing for each other and that there's definitely a camaraderie between the team and the management that's taken us quite far, and it's probably one of the main components behind us being at the top of the league come the middle of February. So yeah, again, I don't think we found out anything new. I suppose if you want to look at certain individuals, we got to see Chesnikov in a slightly different environment to the one that we saw him against Falkirk in terms of him being a little bit more fit and probably ready to take part in the game. I felt that he was more active in that sense, and I thought he actually performed pretty well. And I think he showed you attributes to his game, probably more in a defensive manner, which makes you see why I think McInnes probably coveted him more than Kurjata over the summer. I think he was probably the one out of the two they would have preferred to have had in, during the summer transfer window. And I think you can see that in terms of his genetic makeup and again how well he done, even when he was pushed into more of a wing back role at the start of the second half. So yeah, you probably got to see a little bit something different in Chesnikov, but out with it that there wasn't really a lot about Tuesday that surprised me. This team don't really surprise us now in terms of getting these late winners. That they're always playing until the final whistle. And we seem to keep conjuring up match winners. This is the thing, Shankland's out the team. Craig Halkett, who has been a match winner previously in the same fixture, was out the team. But up steps Thomas Magnuson to come off the bench, and we've now got what can be called the Thomas Magnuson derby to add to the list of other players down over the years.
Speaking about little things we might have learned, I think we now know, and maybe we knew it before, but we've got a pretty fair idea now that out of the midfielders that we have, and I think you've touched upon it before. Magnuson's not your six. He's not your partner for Benny. He's not your partner for Cammy. He's not your partner for Mark Leonard. He's not that guy. But he is the one out of all those I've just mentioned that is prepared to make the Paul Hartley run, the Scottish Cup semi-final against Hibs at Hampden, that lung-bursting run from midfield, that difficult to pick up, that do it in the hope that the ball reaches me rather than the proactive, the reactive nature of someone that kind of goes, "Fuck, I wish I'd made that run." Where is his best position? If he plays from the start, what position and in what formation?
Yeah, I think either a 4-3-3 where he can be the more advanced of the three central mids, or in a 4-2-3-1. I think you could play him not as a creative 10, but you could probably play him in matches. I think if you think about Celtic, who use a number six, or even against Hibs, when they play somebody like Barlasa as a sort of creative number six, I think he's very effective in those types of situations. I think he's done really well coming off the bench a few times this season. You think back to the second goal he gets against St Mirren last month, a few moments after he comes on. That was another really good contribution. And what he showed me on Tuesday, which he hasn't really showed me so far, was I think technical ability. I thought his finish was very good on a technical level because it wasn't right in front of him. It was kind of it would have been easy for a player to have got that ball stuck in their feet, given the pace it was getting played at and the fact that it wasn't really in front of him per se. So I thought he'd done really well to adjust himself to be able to side foot that in. I think he's probably the one of the first midfielders we've had that's been willing to make those kind of runs for a few seasons. Sort of Andy Halliday was somebody who was able to get a few goals for sort of centre mid, but that was more from outside the box. I wouldn't really say he was one that was willing to run beyond the midfielders. Ross Callaghan is maybe one of the last sort of midfielders we had that was willing to do that. I think the problem that Ross had was for all his good running off the ball, he sometimes lacked that technical ability to really make the most out of it. But I think with Magnuson, you can see and I think I said this a few months ago, he's certainly one of the guys we've signed in the last 12 months that has a relative high ceiling when you consider his age and the lack of first team football he's had up to this age. I think he'll only get better, but it's all about trying to find him a place in the team. And again, I think a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1 would benefit him more just now. I think in a flat four with two central midfielders, I'm not sure
Yeah.
that's his game. I think he's better when he plays a slightly more free role and he can get a bit more involved a bit further up the park. And I think that's even more vital when Cammy's out the team. I think having Magnuson in, I wouldn't say he's a straight replacement for Cammy, but he's probably the closest we've got to somebody who can maybe affect the press a bit higher up in midfield.
He only cost us a little bit more than Celtic spent on that frivolous appeal to get him from Valor. I mean, what a piece of business! A stereotypical Jamestown signing, which is probably done more medium to long term. But if you get someone to integrate and who does so quicker and makes an impact like he's done, then all the better. There were one or two that got pass marks for both sides. We're not going to go in depth into the Hibs game. It's happened. We got 3 points. It was far more about the performance. The points than the performance. But I
Are
do
we going
want
to
to hear
mention Mikey Stewart's attempt at a Sandy Clark for 2002, where he's man of the
who was
match?
he going to give man of the
So,
match to?
so when I watched the game back the following day, he was going to give it to Braga. Now, Claudio Braga put in a ton of effort on Tuesday, but
Yep.
his game on the ball was very poor. It was very poor. And then, because it was obviously 1-0 at that stage, he then went, oh, well, I'll give it to Magnuson because he was the match winner. And I'm thinking, somebody's missing out Harry Milne here. It's very,
That
very,
was the next question,
yes, a very obvious omission.
right?
It was a bit strange that there was not even a mention of Harry Milne, who I thought was easily our best player first half when a lot wasn't going right for us. But even after the formation changes and the amount of times he was asked to sort of move between two positions in the centre half, I thought he was excellent.
Harry Milne was excellent. He was the next one I was going to mention. Maybe Michael didn't notice how good Harry was because he was studying mid-game the laws of the game because he still hasn't really got up to speed with the correct terminology and what exactly is and isn't the right or the wrong decision in the game. But Harry Milne was outstanding, whether it was Bill Leckie this week from The Sun talking about how Harry Milne has to be seriously considered for a place in Scotland's World Cup squad. Just looking at, I mean, I know we had Ewan Murray on last week, looking at some of Ewan's tweets this week, and he was suggesting that Harry Milne has been maybe the marquee Jamestown signing. And when you consider Kizaridis and you consider Braga and you consider the others that they've brought to the club, he was a Jamestown signing, and there haven't been many better than him, have there?
No, I think in terms of consistency, he would probably win the title. I think obviously with Kizadidis and Braga, there's more moments throughout the season that you can look back on and say that that had a big impact. But I think when you consider that Harry's had to play a couple of unorthodox positions for him and still done reasonably well, although we all, I think, acknowledge that experiment had sort of ran well past its sell-by date after a couple of appearances. It was through no fault of his, and he still had moments even in those games where he's still done well. So yeah, I think especially with Cammy being out now, there's possibly even going to be an opportunity there for him to maybe even be, playing for a Player of the Year award in terms of Hearts' best Player of the Year. Because I think he's been so consistent. I think people forget the number of assists that he has to that position as well, if you consider his set plays into that as well. So yeah, I think he's been excellent, and he's an example of a good professional. And that's, I think sometimes when we use that terminology to describe a football player, it sometimes can sound a little bit backhanded, because it's like, well, why are you not talking about their ability first? And I'm not looking to downplay how good a footballer he is. I just think that sometimes you see these guys and you think straight away, those are guys that have worked really hard on their craft to get to where they are. Don Cowie was always one of those guys that I always thought, just a guy that you could tell knew what he was good at, wanted to focus on what he was good at and try and improve on that, and would work on that all the time. I think Harry Milne's similar to that. And it's quite funny when people talk about the Scotland squad and that. I, my opinion on it is, through a mixture of Steve Clarke's sort of loyalty to people who get him to championships, and also the fact that you've still got Andy Robertson and Kieran Tierney there, who are incredibly, gifted and experienced professionals at an international level. I just can't see Harry Milne fitting in there somehow. But I do find it funny when some pundits talk about him, because I think they don't realise his age. And it was funny, I think some people done this with James Penrice last year as well. I think because they've kind of just came to some pundits out of nowhere who only focus on Celtic and Rangers. I think they sometimes think Harry Milne's in his mid to early 20s. And I think they used to talk about James Penrice like he'd only been in professional football a couple of years as well. So I think that just highlights their ignorance than anything else. But yes, it's a shame that he's got those types of experienced players ahead of him in the queue. But look, there's no harm in him still showing what he can do between now and then. And he's also got an extended contract to push for at Hearts as well, because it was it an 18-month one that he signed initially? Did that then get extended? I can't really remember or did he get another year? He might have got another year. So I feel like we'd be talking about it if he was out of contract this season. He must have another year at least, maybe 2027.
He signed a new contract in October 25, so last October, that's going to
Aye.
keep him until the summer of 27. Because
Aye,
he's
I thought he'd got
29
another year.
right now.
That's right. So yeah, so look, he'll want to keep playing well so that he can maybe even get an additional year again on top of that. So he's still got plenty to play for, even if I don't think, or I might think, the Scotland squad is maybe just a little bit out with his reach just now.
Yeah, I think Derek McInnes will pick him for Scotland next season. So I think he's got a
Well, there
chance
is that.
of.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that.
Harry Milne, for me, seems to be a shoo-in for Player of the Year. He just seems to be that type of guy, popular in the dressing room, the work ethic, the work rate, the energy that he puts in, Mr. Reliable. And I'll be surprised. I know hopefully we'll win the title and whoever does whatever, but players understand players. and they'll get what he
I
does.
think that'll be a big list of candidates for that.
I agree. I
I
agree.
think Stuart Finlay has been a consistent, not to the extent of Harry Milne, because he's had these moments where he has had errors, but I think Stuart Finlay's probably a good influence in the dressing room. And I think that more than anything else is one of the reasons why Derek McInnes wanted to bring him into the club. And then you've got other guys like Braga in terms of the work ethic and
Hmm.
that as well that he brings. So I think there'll be a few. Be interested to see who wins that come sort of April time when the Player of the Year awards are for Hearts, because I think there's a few guys who could be considered for that. I mean, Ocean McEntee is one of those guys that just turns up every week and plays any position he's put in and always does a consistent job. We've kind of got a few of those types of individuals, so yeah, that could be an interesting one.
We've spoken a lot about leadership at the football club as well, and the fact that we don't just have a captain. I mean, we've been down to like our fourth, fifth choice captains this season, but they're still leaders, and that says a lot when everybody's fit and available. Speaking of which, regardless of the performance, Hearts won an Edinburgh derby without the spine of their team, without Craig Halkett, without Cammy Devlin, and without Lawrence Shankland. Does it matter how we did it? No, it doesn't. That's probably as weak a Hearts team. And I say weak, not meaning lacking strength, but without the leadership that we've just been talking about. Our three best performing players this season, or three of them, and none of them were available for that one game, and to still come out. And we can look ahead to games after Ibrox and see we've got three of the next four at home, and see we've only got two games in March, so that gives us a chance to get Shanklin back. Cammy's obviously hoping to be back for Killy or maybe Aberdeen. We'll see what happens there. But this is something going forward now from a Hearts perspective. We've got 12 cup finals left. It starts on Sunday against Rangers at Ibrox. Hearts looking for back-to-back-to-back wins over Rangers, which by my reckoning we haven't done since we won four in a row in 85, 86, three in the league, and that 3-2 win in the Scottish Cup. So the fear factor is gone, and Hearts against Rangers at Ibrox on Sunday. We will look ahead to that next. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs. So one of the questions I was going to ask, kind of to do with the Hibs game, looking ahead to the Rangers game before the break, but I want to ask now. Something you touched upon 5, 10 minutes ago about how, apart from Tannadice, we haven't really played great, maybe, over the past few weeks. Is Sunday an opportunity to freshen things up, both tactically and also personnel wise?
I don't think we need to make too many changes, because I think the fixture will naturally complement the makeup of the squad that Derek McInnes has put together. So I think in my mind, there's only a couple of changes I would probably make personnel wise. And then on top of that, a little bit of a tweak to the system, but again, nothing too outrageous. I think the blueprint there is already there for us to follow. Sorry, in terms of our previous games against Rangers, in terms of how we can rattle them, how we can get in their faces. And look, Rangers have made improvements to their squad. I think the central midfielder that they've signed for was it Stungratz that they got him from? I think he certainly adds probably more of a natural number six to their team compared to Rascan and Diamondi. I think who still like to sort of operate as eights. I think he gives them a bit more balance there in the centre of midfield. But I think with the other guys, they're still trying to progress them into the squad slowly, because they're maybe a little bit worried about them not being fully match fit. I think Skov Olsen's probably the best example of that. I think if he was fully match fit, he'd be playing every game just now, because it's not really clicking for them in the final third. I think, Gassama blows very hot and cold, and I think just now it's mostly cold. Mikey Moore has his moments, but again, he's very young, so it's hard to get a consistent run of games. And then Chermiti again on Wednesday, you sort of saw that being a natural number nine, it doesn't really come to him. He looks like whenever he shoots that he's hoping to score rather than expecting to score. So yeah, I think because of all these factors, I don't see us having to make too many changes, because again, these are the games that we've dealt with really well this season. It's been some other games that we've found a bit more problematic, and that's because we've not quite evolved yet into a team that really control games and know how to control games when you're maybe a goal up. So I think because of that, Rangers and Celtic matches have been fine for us this season. I can't see any reason why Sunday would be different. I think if Rangers had got all 3 points on Wednesday, I think their fans would have been maybe a bit more patient. But I think there's a little bit of dissent with regards to how Danny Rose conducted himself sort of post match in that game. I'm not sure it's all fair, but we don't care about that. If it means that there's certain Rangers fans who are kind of waiting to pounce a little bit, then I think that's something again that we can maybe use to our advantage. In the way that some teams talk about the Tynecastle atmosphere, if you can keep them quiet in those opening 20, 30 minutes. So yeah, I think a couple of changes at the most. I don't think there needs to be wholesale changes.
88 minutes gone at Fir Park on Wednesday night. It's Motherwell 0, Rangers 1. The only sound you can hear is from the packed away end at Fir Park. Danny, Danny, roll, Danny, Danny, roll. Subsequent to that, after the final whistle, reading the message boards, for fuck's sake, Roll hasn't got a clue. What's he playing that team for? What's he doing this for? How the fuck can we not beat 10 men? Right? Football fans are fickle. We
But
all are. But we're now 5 points clear at the top. They've not so much turned on the manager, but that isn't even a conversation if Rangers hold on. But they didn't. And now Danny Roll's come out today and he's spoken about, oh, there's a lot of pressure on Hearts in this game. Fuck off, son. There's none. There is zero pressure on Hearts in this game. And that's the way that Derek McInnes is looking ahead to this one. Oh, but what if you lose? We're not thinking about what if we lose. And the reason I say there's no pressure on Hearts, apart from the pressure we put on ourselves and the expectation level, but the fear factor no longer exists, certainly this season with Celtic or Rangers. This is the new Hearts. This is the new mentality that us fans should have. This is a message I got from Follow, the Rangers account on Twitter. I don't know who runs it. I follow it. I found them pretty mild-mannered and pretty reasonable over the years. They're not the kind of Yahoo shouty old firm podcast. And the tweet, this is how it started. I saw a projection earlier that had Team A winning the Scottish Premiership by a point from Team B, with Team C a further behind in third. And then it's Gandolfini from Sopranos kind of putting his head down and go, I don't think I can take any more of this. So I responded, not sure I can handle Sunday, never mind 11 more matches after that. Here's the tweet that tells us that all the pressure is on Rangers. The response from Follow. A Hertz win on Sunday makes it a two-horse race. A Rangers win keeps us in it and helps Celtic brackets. No pressure. The point there is this is more important for Rangers to win than it is for Hearts. I suggested that John Souttar's own goal in added time of the final game of the season at Tynecastle between Hearts and Rangers to so happen to hand Hearts the title, thanks to a former Hearts player, could be the perfect way to end this season. But we can't look too far ahead. We can't look ahead to 3 of the next 4 games after Sunday being at Tynecastle. But what we can do is analyse what this approach to the game is, and is it more important for Rangers than it is for Hearts, Scott?
yeah, and I think I get what Danny Rose trying to do. He's trying to build a narrative that puts a little bit of pressure on Hearts because he'll understand that there will be significant pressure on Rangers because they are expected to be in the hunt for league titles at this stage of the season. I watched the whole press conference with Rule and it was about 12 and a half minutes long, and they touched on Hearts a couple of times. And during that segment where he mentioned about Hearts being under pressure, Rangers got to within 2 points of us, I would have liked one of the very experienced journalists to have maybe pushed back on that narrative and maybe asked them if it doesn't really matter about that because of the outlay that and how well backed he's been in January to bring in his own players, that actually the pressure still very much remains at Rangers' feet in this fixture. But again, nobody took the time to ask that question. It probably didn't even, you know, probably didn't even translate or compute with them. They probably didn't even have a time to think about it. But yeah, I think all the pressure is with them. I think all the pressure from Hearts comes from out with Hearts. I think there's pressure that people want to put on us because they've said for a while that we're going to fall away. So I think there's that pressure that's coming, but again, that's outside quarters. That's very much coming out with of the club itself. And I think the club itself, I believe Derek McIntosh when he says that they're just looking to enjoy this just now. I think that's something that they're doing, and I can't see why that wouldn't continue. And to be in a position where, and we're not looking to try and suggest that this will happen, but to be in a position where, at the very worst, we're 2 points clear come the 15th of February with 6 games pre-split remaining, with 4 games at home against clubs who range from fourth in the league downwards, 2 away games against currently the bottom 2 clubs in the league. I think if you look at that, and this is, I've said this before, I think what we've got to do as fans is try not to get too laser focused on one game. We need to keep looking at this as what's going to happen over the next few weeks and months. And I think if you try and look at it that way, you appreciate just how strong a position we're in just now. We can go into this on Sunday. I'm not saying we should look to play for a draw, but we can come away from that knowing that we'd be content with one. I don't think Rangers could say the same.
Mhm. Good point. And I want to use that shortly when we speak about our team selection and what we would go with. Because I'm not going to set up, if it's me, in a very attacking, adventurous way with 4 forwards like we did against Hibs in midweek. I think we can end up with 4 forwards if we need to get a goal later in the game. But I think for me, it would be a pragmatic lineup, which you and I can select our team shortly. I know Joel and Craig on Hearts Standard have tried to do so as well. We're at a stage now where there's 2 different teams. There's the teams that we as fans would pick, and the team that Derek McIntosh will select. And it was more adventurous than I think a lot of us thought it would be on Tuesday night. It had its merits, but it also had moments where it didn't work. From a Rangers perspective and the pressure that they have this Sunday, I said earlier in the show, when Hearts are favourites and they win the games that they're expected to win and take care of those matches, then that's what they need to do. So I'm talking Falkirk at home, Aberdeen at home, Killie away, Dundee at home, Livingston away. And I've deliberately missed out the game against Motherwell, where Hearts are probably going to be favourites, but Hearts are probably going to be
Not
strong
by much.
favourites.
Yeah.
Correct. Hearts are probably going to be strong favourites in all those games. That's the pressure. That's a different type of pressure. That's expectation. That's you're expected to win. Go and do it. What do you mean you didn't pick up all 3 points against Kilmarnock at home because they equalised late on? What do you mean you were shite in the second half against Dundee United at home and you didn't pick up all 3 points? Games you're expected to win. The pressure of going into those games, not getting 3 points, coming out of those games if that happens, that's the pressure. There's none on Hearts this Sunday. We'll take the Falkirk game as it comes. But this Rangers game on Sunday, Rangers are even money. It's very rare that you get an old firm side at home against a non-old firm side and they're not odds-on favourites. Hearts are 3-1. As league leaders, you would suggest that's value. However, right now, the draw is probably a result that would favour Hearts more than it does for Rangers. But I still don't think, and I'll speak to you about this later on, would you take a point right now? This is a game that we can win. And if we can win it, and pretty much according to follow, knock Rangers out of the title race to an extent, then it's something we need to look to do. We'll worry about pressure and expectation for home games when they actually happen. You're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. Okay, let's wrap up this shorter episode, keep it nice and brief, by looking at possible lineups for Hearts and formation. Is this a game where a back 3 might enter Derek McInnes's thinking for Sunday, Scott?
It might enter his thinking. I personally wouldn't do it, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see him go down that route. It'll be interesting to see how much he gets out of that cameo for Altena at right wing back on Tuesday, and if that makes that decision a little bit easier for him. Because one of the reasons why we've not been able to play with a three at the back much this season has been the fact that we haven't really had a right wing back at the club. I think with Altena, in terms of what he can offer you going forward, would present a good option. But again, it just depends what McInnes is thinking in terms of that. But for me, we have the personnel to play that system. But yeah, it's not what I'd want to see. But again, I would understand if we went ahead with that.
What do you want to see?
Well, I think so. Given how Rangers play, Rangers tend to be playing with a 4-3-3 just now, but they do like their two fullbacks to push on. I think there's space either side of the centre halves to exploit, and I think we've done that earlier on at Ibrox pretty well, in particular in the first half and then the last 10-15 minutes of that game. So I would like to see us go for a 4-2-3-1. I'd still like us to play with width higher up the park to exploit that space in a more direct fashion where we're not having to try and play through the midfield, because I still think we've struggled with that to an extent so far this season. So I think you stick with Swallow in goals. No reason really to veer away from that. McAtee, who I thought had a really good game on Tuesday. I would play him at right back. I'd have Milne at left back. I would then obviously bring Halkett back in the team and drop Kent to the bench. So Halkett and Finlay would be back together. Benny and Leonard, it's a strange one with them. I think they have sort of struggled as a tandem over the last couple of games. But I do have belief that Mark Leonard could prove to be a pivotal player for us after this Rangers game in terms of what he can offer us in possession when we've got a bit more of the ball. I think he could prove to be a decent player for us in that sort of 6 game stretch off the back of the Rangers game. So I would stick with those two just now, even although I've got slight concerns about how they complement each other. And then up front, I would have Braga on the right. I was to and fro between Braga on the right and Chesnikov on the right. I felt that Chesnikov did apply himself well on Tuesday, but I thought there were still minor moments in that game and against Falkirk where I still feel like he dives in a little bit, and I think a game like Ibrox where you know how quick to the cards the referees can be at times. I'm not convinced by Chesnikov yet. I still think we need to see a little bit more of him and sort of work on some of those aspects of his game. So I'll keep Braga in at right wing. I'd still keep Kizarides in. I know he's been poor recently, but I still think his work ethic's there. And I still think there's the potential there for him to come up with a moment as well. I'd have Magnus in, not as a number 10, but as a third midfielder who can sort of push on their midfield for a sort of higher end of the park. And then I would stick with Kabore. I think Kabore has been frustrating at times over the last few games, but I still think there's a chaos factor in there. I still think that to get the best out of him, we probably need to show a bit of faith in him. And I think if we start dropping in him again when we don't really have an alternative, with Shanklin being out, Kabangu's pretty much now persona non grata. He wasn't even on the bench on Tuesday, and Wilson now down at Spurs. I'm not sure how good that would do for him if we were to drop him again. So I would stick with Kabore. I still think that's worth the risk. And then we've got options like Mato and Perjota and Aju and that we can maybe bring on if we need them in the second half. So that would be the sort of system and personnel that I would like to see anyway on Sunday. But again, wouldn't be shocked if we did go with a 3-5-2. I just worry that I felt that you need to work the channels against Rangers because they will push Tavernier, and whether it's Magoma or their new signing, the left back that they signed in January, whether it's him starting, I think they'll try and push those two players on. And I do think there's opportunities there for us to hit them on the break. So I'd like to see us play with a 4-2-3-1 for that reason alone.
I'm torn. I'm torn. I've gone back and forward. I've got two lineups. One, a more pragmatic lineup. And this isn't what I think Derek McInnes will do. This is a kind of I think it's more important for Rangers to win than for Hearts to win. But I don't want to be too negative and invite them onto us, and then we have to chase the game. So I'm kind of torn between how I want to kind of set up, and I've got a 3-5-2 or a 3-5-1-1, and I've got a 4-3-3. So I'll read them both out. Tell me which one you prefer. The reason for the first one is because I'm going to split this game up into the first hour and the last half hour. And I think we can keep it tight by playing a kind of counter-attacking role and have Kiziridis, Kabore, Chesnikov, Mato, and Kerjota all options off the bench. So this first lineup, I'm not playing Kiziridis and I'm not playing Kabore. I'm playing Braga as a lone striker with Magnuson playing off him. And the back three would be Steinwender on the right, because I think we need pace to cope with what they have from wide areas. If you're playing a back three, Halkett pretty much has to play in the middle of the back three and Finlay on the left-hand side. That allows Altena to come in. So you've got your three centre-backs playing in their normal positions. You've got Altena and Milne as your wing-backs. And I know Harry's probably a better left-back, but it's not a square peg in a round hole here. You've got Altena, who I love his bravery. I love the fact when he comes on and his kind of appearances as a cameo off the bench, he wants to get forward. And it's not a kind of worrying about playing the ball back or everything's safe. He's a risk taker, and I think we need that. So I'd have alternate right side, I'd have Milne on the left hand side. I think Benny and Leonard together with Magnuson in front isn't too bad, and I think that would work in a game like this to get good players in control of the football with Magnuson and Braga, Magnuson playing off Braga. That's the pragmatic team. To bring on Kiziridis, to bring on Kabori, potentially to bring on Chesnikov, Mato, or Kerjota. The other one's a
So
4-3-3.
wait a minute, just to cover that one again, you said sort of 3-5-1-1. Is that
Three,
McAtee in the middle with Benny and Leonard? Is that right?
yeah,
Aye,
yeah, but
aye,
it's
right, aye.
it's kind of McEntee playing the role. Did he not play the same role at Celtic Park when he was
Hmm.
on McGregor? So that kind of advance, not as a six. Let Benny and Leonard just do the protecting and get the ball forward. The problem with that lineup is a lack of creativity, maybe a lack of width as well. But I think that's a hard to beat lineup. And it goes back to thinking about this is a game that they need to win more than we do. But if we want to think, let's have a go, because Rangers at the back, I don't fear them. So I've gone for McEntee at right back, Halkett and Finlay as your two centre backs, and Milne at left back. I've gone for Benny and Leonard with Magnuson in front of them, and I've gone Kizzy, Kabori, and Braga as a straight 4-3-3 with the work rate of Kiziridis and Braga that's going to be required to get back, going to be important. So I can see merits in both. I just think it ultimately depends on how adventurous Derek McInnes wants to be. But I think this is a game we can be adventurous as the game goes on. We don't have to start adventurous. What do you make of those two and the kind of thought process behind them?
Yeah, I'd probably plump for the 4-3-3 out of the two. I think my concern about the three at the back is it's not even concerns that I have, it's just the overall sort of optics that fans generally have about a back three and they turn it into a back five pretty quickly. So I think from that point of view, I don't know if that already deflates a little bit of momentum that's built up pre-match when fans see that that's how we're going to line up. So I suppose there's maybe a slight concern about from that sense. I wouldn't say like I'm not concerned about how we would set up in a 3-5-2 because Derek McInnes is very good at getting his teams flexible to play, and chop and change formations within a match. So that's not a problem from that point of view. I think it's more so maybe a little bit of an optics viewpoint and maybe how that affects the fans more than anything else. And I do like the idea of having players in the channels so that when their fullbacks press high, our centre halves have options to go long quite quickly. My concern with the 3-5-2 is that it could be easy for not so much Halkett, because I think Halkett's pretty good on the ball, but Finlay, if you look at how his form's been and some of the moments he's had recently, I think when there's little option in front of him, I think he then starts to struggle. And my concern would be that it would turn into a five pretty quickly and we would maybe struggle to break out and it would just be inviting Rangers onto them. I would rather they have things to worry about with us. And I feel like if they looked at our team lines and saw that Kazidis wasn't playing and Kabori weren't playing, even if they're maybe
That's
not
fair.
fully informed just now, I
Yeah,
think
that's fair.
that gives them and the fans, again, think about the impact of the fans, gives them that advantage. I would like to see us have options so that game, but knowing that we could easily turn on them and win a couple of set plays and maybe get a couple of half chances in the opening 20 minutes. My concern about the three is that we end up camped in our own half for long spells of the first half. And don't get me wrong, we could even get to half time at 0-0, but the die could already be cast in terms of how the game ends up going, and it could just feel inevitable that Rangers eventually get a goal, and then we have to react to that. So, the more I think about it, the more I think I want to see certain individuals still involved in that setup from the start, because I think they've still got something to offer. I think Kabore against a team that will look to play a high line. I think Kabore, that could be a good opportunity for him. Again, if you think back to the red card incident against Celtic at Tynecastle, I think that's an idea, the type of running ball that Kabore wants to be involved in. Again, against Hibs, because the game was so back and forth and it was so frantic, and because we were playing with the two inverted wingers, Chesnikov and Kizadidis, they're wanting to cut inside and they're wanting to sort of play balls, little 1-2s with the forwards. And again, that's just not Kabore's game. He's just not a link-up player. Similar to Kabangu, I think he struggles on a technical level to be able to provide that option that Shankland can play so well. I think Kabore wants to be in and around the penalty box, and he wants to be getting on the end of things and running onto things. So I think we can deploy him in that position with Braga. I'm not a huge fan of playing Braga out wide, but again, I've just got a slight concern over Chesnikov in terms of his technique and tackling at times. I just worry about that on at that ground, because we've seen it happen
Yeah.
in the past with wingers and that sometimes. So I don't really want to struggle with that. And he's still trying to find his feet fitness wise anyway. So it's maybe too much of an ask to ask him to play two games in under a week. So yeah, that's why I would stick with the maybe slightly out of form options, because I get it from a form perspective. I mean, Kizadidis, staying on the park as long as he did on Tuesday, that was some effort, because I was getting so annoyed at him at times. We just did, and the one time he did go down the left, he wins us a corner, but every time he wanted to cut inside, and I think there was a point in the second half where him and Leonard had created a good opportunity for themselves to get the ball in the box and then played one or two passes back to each other. And then we lost the ball and Hibs ran up the park and nearly scored for the break. And I think at the very least they got a corner kick from it. So yeah, I think he'll need to improve in terms of his decision making and his overall quality, but I've got faith that he can do it. I still think there's a very good player in that, and this is more a bad runny form rather than what we're going to see over the long term.
I think when I first started considering what the formation is going to be, and I looked at a three, but the more I've listened to others and heard arguments for and against, I think with Mikey Moore playing where he does, I'd love Altena to start, but you're not putting Altena against Mikey Moore. That's why a Steinvender or a McIntyre on the right hand side. And look, you can't come out and talk about worrying about the opposition and then naming a lineup, because you're right. That first lineup of the two that I gave, if I saw that on social media when the team's announced, I'm like, well, it's Braga and it's nine kind of defensive minded players. So where are we gonna get the goals from? And if we concede first in the first lineup, do you have the players available on the field without having to change it to chase a game? Whereas in the second lineup, at least you have a front three, which if you do go a goal down early, then you can still get it back. But if I remember rightly, the last few trips to Ibrox, Hearts have started well. I mean,
Yeah,
Shankland scored. This to me is maybe playing devil's advocate against myself and that pragmatic lineup that was first mentioned. I don't want to go gung ho, but I think this is an opportunity. What is it to potentially put 8 points between us? And yeah, we'd probably take a point right now if offered without having to play the game. But this is an opportunity against a Rangers side that are beatable to put a big gap between the two sides and maybe have Celtic as the main challengers. So if we can get out the blocks quickly, I think we've had what Shankland's done well. We've started pretty well in three or four of the recent trips to Ibrox, have we not?
Yeah, we've had a couple of early goals. Even before this season, there was the 2-2 game where we scored earlier on. There was the game where we got beat 2-1 late on, where we scored early on in that game as well. So we have had some reasonably sort of bright starts. I think one of the reasons why I don't want to see us play a containment game for the start is that I just don't think we're good enough in possession just now. So my worry would be that we'd just be constantly turning the ball over anyway. So with that in mind, I'd rather we're turning the ball over when we're at least attacking them in their half rather than turning it over in our own half because there's no real out ball out there because we're playing with like maybe say one out and out forward and sort of playing with the wing backs. So yeah, I think that's why I would prefer to see us sort of maybe go a bit more direct and look, stick to the principles that have got us here in the first place, ultimately. Like I get that it's not been perfect and there's been certainly examples recently, and Tuesday was another one of them where there's still lots of progression for this team and squad to go through to get to where it needs to be, and we are still punching above our weight as a team. But on the whole, the reason why we've got here is because of how Derek McInnes has set us up to be a team that are very good out of possession. And I think that's why we should stick with that on Sunday, stick with those principles and stick with the players that, on the whole, have done a good job for us this season, even if they're maybe slightly out of form at this very moment in time.
It's funny how your mind plays tricks on you because I'm thinking about those early Shankland goals at Ibrox. That was in 2023,
Mm.
in May and in October. I've conveniently forgotten about the time that we had our shorts taken down and our arses spanked in the 5-0 game. I've conveniently forgotten about the time that Cyril Dessers was the early goal scorer at Ibrox. So yeah, it's selective thinking, but we have started. We have got recent history of starting well at Ibrox. The Deal or No Deal banker is a guest appearance on the show, and it's quite simple. He's offering you right now, without the need to play the game on Sunday, 1 point and up the road. Scott McIntosh, what are you saying to the Deal or No Deal banker?
Fuck no. I think this is another example of where the mindset needs to change for the club, and I think this is where even if we could all say we would be happy at the end of the game with a draw because we know that that still keeps a certain degree of comfort between us and Rangers. We have to respect the fact that Celtic are still involved in this title race as well, and I still think 3 points goes a huge way to deflating them and keeping them at arm's length. So for me, I think I would say no to that, and I would still want us to go for the 3 points because I think it's still very possible. Albeit, I would be a happy man if we walked out of there with a draw, because it would still put us a real sort of position of strength given the runny fixtures that we've got coming up.
The last time Hearts won back-to-back games at Ibrox, you remember when it was?
It would have been well before I was born. I think you'll probably be going back to the 40s or the 50s, probably. Maybe even before then. Because even when we had the good season, 85, 86, we got beat there, I think, early on that season at Ibrox, and then we won there when Calhoun scored the double. So we didn't get the double against them twice that year. And I think in my lifetime, we've only beaten them at Ibrox 7 or 8 times. So it's definitely not been in my lifetime. Obviously, the 70s, we were pretty feral most of that time. So we wouldn't have done it in the 70s. So you're going back to the early 60s, late 50s. But I'd be more inclined to say it goes back even further back than then.
I thought I had the answer, but I don't. It looks I've got an answer. I don't know if it was the last time. Maybe need a little bit of a nudge here from Hearts Heritage. 1947, And 1948, April
Mm.
7th, 47, Alfie Conn and Jackie Dewar in a
Oh, wait a minute.
2-1 win. And
Did we do
48,
back? Did we technically do back to back this century? So we beat them 2-1 in 2012 when Hamill scores a penalty, and then Rangers get demoted. And then I think
yes,
the
we
next
did.
time we play them,
Yes, yes, we
we
did.
win
Yes, we
2-1 with
did.
Solskjaer.
Good
I
shout.
know it's a couple of years apart,
Good
but
shout.
if
Good
you want
shout.
to
So,
be
yeah, no, you're
technical
right.
about it, you could say that
We
that's
we
back to
did.
back.
Osmond Soul and Ian Black, Jamie Hamill. That was a 2-1 at Ibrox in March 2012. All right, top flight. It looks it looks like, and we might be wrong. So we did it in 20 kind of 12, 2014. It looks like top flight. We haven't done it since 47, 48. I've checked London Hearts and I don't see anything since. The bottom line is, rather than kind of going into the minutiae of that, is this is a huge opportunity for Hearts. Does that opportunity reflect in your prediction for this game?
uh, I'm going to go 1-0 Hearts.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a tight game. Rangers are they're a funny team. They've almost, I would say that the way that they've dragged themselves back into the title race under Danny Rule, it's been almost following our blueprint for a football team, which is to be tight at the back, make the most of your set plays, and do very little on the ball. And Rangers have kind of played like that since Danny Rules came in. He's maybe wanting them to be a bit more expansive now that he's been allowed to bring in some of his own new players. But again, that might not happen straight away. So yeah, I think because of that, I don't think Rangers are set up to blow us away. Uh, and because of that, I think we'll stay in the game, even if we maybe don't see much of the ball in the early stages. And I think we've shown this season that we don't have to create a lot of chances to get a win. We just, again, we just seem to come up with different match winners. So I mean, I'm now trying to think who gets the goal. I don't know. Would it come from maybe a set play? Possibly. So let's go for let's go for Halkett and 1-0 Hearts.
Okay. I'm going to go 1-1, but I'm going to go 1-1 with a caveat. And the caveat is that Celtic earlier have failed to win at Kilmarnock. So it's as you were, 6 points to Celtic, who've got a game in hand, 5 points to Rangers. And I think together that outcome isn't too bad. And I'm going to go Claudio Braga in a 1-1 draw at Ibrox. Just before we go, there's been a fair bit on social media recently about Hearts home games coming up and the atmosphere. And something I think is important to mention is the work that's been done behind the scenes by the Gorgie Ultras and by others to try and raise money for tifos and displays to get the best possible atmosphere before games. Because looking on from afar this week, whether it was the drone shot of the tifo behind the goal, and I know for a fact because Corbett had been sending me pictures in the build-up. This took a lot of work to do that, and it looked absolutely amazing. And they're hoping to do something similar, not just on one or two occasions, but for as many of the home games to come. So, Scotty, do you want to give us a few more details about what they're planning and how you can help?
Yeah, so earlier on in the week, they created a GoFundMe page just to try and help create some funds. This helps with sort of creating all the large scale tifos and the visual displays that people have seen over the last couple of seasons. It allows them to purchase all the various materials and paints and banners that they require as well. And that just allows us to keep the good atmosphere and vibes going. I thought the tifo the other night was great. Purely for the fact that we used the old-fashioned badge. We weren't using the badge that Chris Robinson converted us to in the late 90s. Not that that's a bad badge, but I've always got a fondness for the older one. So yeah, I think they deserve a huge amount of thanks for fellow Hearts fans because, like you say, that's not something that just happens in a 5 minute window pre-match. That's something that requires volunteers to turn up well before the game's kicked off to make sure that all the flags are in place, make sure that the tifo's in the ground before people start flooding in. And it also involves them having a respectable and trustworthy dialogue with the club. So the club have to put trust in them as well to make sure that they're doing the right thing by the club, and it's not going to lead to the type of problems and fines that you can see from ultra groups abroad, where it can be a little bit different in terms of how they handle their displays and their banners. So they're currently looking for fundraising for that. They were looking for 5,000 as an initial amount. I know that they're just shy of that. I think they're maybe roughly around about 4,800 just now. But there's no reason why they can't go way above and beyond that. So if you do have money, I know it's still that time of year where everyone's still maybe sometimes try to recover from Christmas. But if you do have some money there to maybe contribute to it, go ahead on their Twitter page. You'll find the GoFundMe link there. It's also on my Twitter page. And if you're needing the information, I'll put it on Kickback as well when I put up a little update with this show going on. So yeah, it'd be good for us to give them a backing because I think they've been great again this season, and we want to help encourage more people to join their ranks as well. So yeah, anything that you can do to sort of help fund that would be very much appreciated.
Well said, and good luck to the boys and girls involved in that. And work has already started about the next TIFO that'll take place at Tynecastle. What a week so far, but what a week it could be. A win for Hearts at Ibrox on Sunday would take us 8 points clear at the top of the Premiership. And that would be of Rangers. Hopefully Kilmarnock can do us a favour as well. But one thing's for sure, we're breathing rarefied air right now. We're enjoying the ride, but what an opportunity. 12 more cup finals to go before that rarefied air can be us standing on top of the world with our arms outstretched. That's the aim. It's step by step right now. Let's see what we can do at Ibrox on Sunday, and we shall reconvene with On the Whistle on Sunday evening, and we'll take it from there. Bye for now.